engine of the Swordfish as she now passes her way over towards the Jaywick end of the seafront and over the Martello Tower, which gives way for, graciously, our next aircraft to have a little time in the spotlight. This is a great sight to see, isn't it? The Wasp HAS Mark I helicopter.
So I love, Ian, I love the design of this helicopter. If you look underneath with the wheels sticking out, it almost looks a bit like a bug. It looks a bit, not like a wasp, but I don't know, it's like it's going to grab the ground or something. And there's a reason for that. It's basically a quadricycle undercarriage with full castering, but long straight oleos, lockable wheels that can be towed outwards or inwards depending on operational needs. And this basically meant that it could be gripped on top of for deck storage when they're out at sea. This Wasp, the HAS Mark I, was introduced in service in 1964 and was the first generation jet-engined helicopter built for the Royal Navy. She's based on a concept for a light utility helicopter for the British Army, which some people know is the Scout. She's a light 5-seat helicopter. It has lots of storage capabilities. The opportunity to store at sea on a heaving deck when landing in rough seas, and that's why you've got that quadricycle undercarriage there, so she can grip the deck. She's also kitted out with anti-submarine warfare avionics, anti-submarine warfare armament, auto-stabilisation, autopilot, a radar altimeter for search and rescue operations, a winch and flotation devices. And as we look centre stage here, centre of the crowd line, hovering in front of the ships in the wind farm, the Wasp is hovering above the sea as she would have done in search and rescue operations, and she's gently kind of flying backwards at the moment and rotating, pointing out to the wind farm, giving us a wonderful view of the design of this aircraft. I think with all that kit on board, she seemed pretty advanced for her time, just back in '64. The Wasp helicopter was known actually colloquially as the submarine killer, and she was best deployed paired with a Wessex submarine hunter, but she was taken out of frontline service in the late 80s when they introduced the Westland Lynx helicopter, which many people would be familiar with. So hovering again, centre of the display line, and slowly rotating upwards and twirling towards the wind farm.
Now this reminds me, I mean, a totally different aircraft, but I've got a flashback to the Harrier. When the Harrier used to be here at Clacton Air Show for many, many years. It used to...
Enjoys displaying at all the seaside shows, Southport, Blackpool, Clacton, and in the past the Wales Air Show as well. He loves the seaside, and he enjoyed his time this morning chatting to us here at the commentary point, and he was chomping at the bit to get airborne and delight us with some of his routine.
That's quite good as he flies over the wind farm, well not quite as far out, but it looks like that to our vision. And to see his sort of rotor just above the wind turbine rotor, a very good image, great for your cameras as he climbs a little higher now, smoke still trailing. Unusual in a way that there's such a that the rotor blade is so high above his cockpit. There's that big sort of strut, if you're listening to this at home, that holds the rotor high above his cockpit. And then obviously it looks quite flimsy piece of kit holding on that tail fin. You know, a bit like sometimes a mosquito or a flying waspy fly. Sometimes looks like the rear half isn't almost attached to the front half. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, Peter describes it a little bit like a flying windmill. So, you know, when you build your sandcastle and you put the windmill in the top, he said it's a little bit like that, or even a rotating parachute. Basically, the rotor blades of the gyro, they're completely freewheeling in flight. They're driven solely by the air going up through the rotor disc. There's no mechanical drive to the rotors in flight. So it's the phenomenon of auto rotor jet speed indicator is showing 0. The propeller of the aircraft pushes it through the air for forward flight. The rotor's inclined slightly back and the air flows over the rotor disc, keeps the rotor spinning. You stop the engine and the aircraft slows and descend. The air still flows through the disc and keeps them turning, even when flying sideways or even backwards. And as Peter said, well, even birds don't fly backwards, so it's a little bit crazy. The rest of the aircraft's hanging from that rotor, as Ian was saying. It's almost like on a pendulum there, giving the gyrocopter natural stability. The rotor wings are flying through the air at 350 miles per hour. So turbulent, unstable air and wind gusts are sampled, and this makes the gyroplane much more stable than most aircraft and capable of flying in conditions others won't. So even when it gets a bit windy, the gyrocopter can withstand winds of up to 40 knots, which is pretty impressive for such a lightweight craft. I said yesterday, Peter, your aircraft is small but mighty.
They look so fun, don't they? Peter's having an absolute ball up there.
He's wagging his tail at us. And it's kind of what I love about the gyro display is when you meet Peter, his character is pretty much the same as the display. He's very excitable, very jolly, wagging his tail, can't wait to get flying, and always has a big smile on his face.
Big smiles for Alf Wyatt. No relation, but Alf Wyatt is celebrating their 32nd wedding anniversary today. They're from Haverhill. Lots of love from your wife, Sam. Hi to the Coopers from Ipswich. They're with us at the Clacton Air Show. Lovely to see them.
Now I think, Ian, we need to have our eyes peeled here because Peter's hovering over the sea, parallel with the beach, and I think I can see something waving. It looks rather like a big red hand.
There it is.
Come on everyone, give him a wave. He can't see you from the cockpit. He gets very sad if he doesn't get enough waves. So come on, big waves to Peter and the gyrocopter. Peter been flying for over 30.
And looking so much better. And all I'll say to you and the whole family is, here's to next year, hey?
Steve, that's wonderful, thank you. And well done, Rosie. And I know Rosie is going to enjoy this next aviation wonder in the skies over Clacton. You're listening to Radio Air Show with Ian Wyatt and Steve Scruton on BBC Essex, live from the seafront, as we welcome the Bronco. Now, Sam, wow, look at this aircraft. Look at the bright orange tinge to the wings and the tails.
This really is from one extreme to the other, from the lightweight and the nimble to, well, very nimble but rather large, huge aircraft. This is the North American Rockwell OV-10 Bronco, flown by Tony de Bruyn, who flew in yesterday from Belgium. Now, we really are in for a delight this afternoon. This aircraft has got some really interesting history. It was used as a reconnaissance aircraft, information gathering. It has a huge glass cockpit, which you can see if you look very carefully when Tony does his low passes. Tony said that when you fly this aircraft, you really feel like you're on top of the world. The Bronco was conceived by 2 US Marines and built as a prototype in their garage. Its first flight took place in 1965, and then it flew with 3 US branches from the mid-60s to the mid-1990s, the US Air Force, Navy and Marines. The original concept for the Bronco was also to be amphibious, so water going, but that was then changed. And it still actually flies. In California, they use it for the firefighting fires. The Bronco goes out, there's 14 different Broncos, they go out and they look for the fires, they put their smoke on, and then the water bombers come in and follow them and put all the fires out.
Now Tony, the pilot, is wearing a bright orange jumpsuit. It's so bright, it is as bright as those flashes of orange on the wingtips. And he was chatting to us earlier saying how much he loves Clacton. It's one of their favourites. They come from Belgium, and yet this is one of their absolute favourite places to be. So as he flies quite low and slow across the seafront now from left to right, please give Tony a big wave. We promised we'd get you waving. Come on, Clacton, wave to Tony in the Bronco.
So Tony's flying low and slow, parallel to the beach at the moment, and that's to demonstrate the aircraft's short takeoff and landing capability.
He's waving, even in my dodgy second pair of glasses. After breaking my proper ones on Wednesday, I can see him waving in that big glass cockpit, banking now over the yachts, looking so graceful.
It's got excellent manoeuvrability, this aircraft, and the display sequence is really designed to best demonstrate those capabilities. You'll see a short past the wing farm heading out to the Jaywick direction of the beach.
Something we didn't really see so much of yesterday. I love it when the sun just glints on the aircraft, and we're getting a lot of that today. There's a lot of cloud further out to see, a lot of high cloud, but there's a lot of sunshine here too today, although the wind's picked up, hasn't it?
It is getting a bit windy. I don't think it's going to be any problem for the Bronco as Tony dives down there. The smoke is on. He's heading down to the centre of the display line and banking up so we can see the underbelly of the aircraft. Listen to the roar of that engine. Now, the aircraft was designed to use roads for takeoff and landing originally. It could also operate from an aircraft carrier, but it could also loiter for around 3 hours at speeds of up to 350 miles per hour. It flew in countries such as Morocco, the Philippines and Colombia, and in fact it still operates in the Philippines today.
He's been coming to the air show both days for 23 years and just loves it. Of course, Cameron, you're very, very welcome. Lisa sent me the email wire to bbc.co.uk. The Bronco, we think Tony's been coming for the best part of 5 or 6 years now, making that journey across the water from Belgium, where they're based, in the heart of Europe, to Clacton. Now you're getting a wonderful view if you're in one of those 10 sailing barges off of Clacton Pier. Wow, what about that?
So Tony is flying on what we call a knife edge pass and banking round a short turn and heading out to sea.
Hi to Joseph, who's celebrating his 10th birthday with us today at the Clacton Air Show to watch the flying. They've travelled from Stowmarket. Mum, Dad,
It's Clacton Air Show.
BBC Essex.
So eyes to the sky, the Firebirds aerobatic display team, they're just looping above the beach centre of the display line and banking over in towards the Jaywick direction of the beach. You've got a wonderful view of the aircraft this afternoon. We've got a fairly cloudy, bluey kind of sky, but with some high cirrus clouds there, making it very easy to depict the aircraft against the backdrop. Flying for us this afternoon, we've got display pilot in the lead, Nigel Reed, and co-pilot John Dodd. We had a lovely chat to them earlier today, and they are so excited to be here back in Clacton for yet another year, displaying in the Vans RV4 aircraft. Now pulling up into a very tight little loop there. We've got smoke trailing. The aircraft are very close, flying with real precision, as we saw last night with their pyrotechnic display, with all their lights twinkling and the fireworks from the wingtips, which is really something quite special. If you missed that, don't forget to tune in to the BBC iPlayer to see the video of that. Fairly lightweight and nimble aircraft weighing just 500 kilograms. That's the equivalent of about a third of the weight of an average VW Golf. But they're maybe lightweight, but they're very powerful with a 5.3 litre, 160 horsepower Lycoming engine, giving it the performance of a hot rod. Music really fits so well to their wonderful routine, which is aerobatic but also feels a little bit like a pirouetting ballet in the sky, as Nigel flies the lead aircraft pointing out towards the pier, and John Dodd behind him twirling around his smoke trail, heading out towards the pier. Nigel and Dodd are great comrades and friends, but they're also colleagues. They both fly for British Airways and Boeing aircraft, so you perhaps may be on one of their flights in future. And I know for a fact that Ian, you're not going to ask for a leave on your flight.
No, I'm a complete wimp and flying upside down, but I think on my Boeing 737 to Spain, I'll go for a nice calm
Give it a miss.
flight.
Yes. Now, one of the advantages of flying aerobatics for a pilot is being physically fit. It's really important for not just the aircraft to be fit and well fueled, but for the pilot to be as well. And in fact, Nigel and John this morning went for a run before they had breakfast, making sure they're in tip-top fitness, ready for their display.
They also told us about how and you told us yesterday, Sam, and I wasn't doubting you, but they confirmed they walk through the display, they walk through the routine, so they remind themselves of it. And I would love to see that one day. I'll have to ask them if I could watch them walking the display out.
Well, I know the guys are displaying at another show this weekend, so perhaps we'll ask them a special request if they can video their dance routine on the ground. If you're looking up at the Firebirds thinking, well, that Ian doesn't know what he's talking about, I want to go and do aerobatics, well, I can highly recommend it. This is how I got into flying. I did an aerobatic flight and I really got the bug. So if you've not done it and you fancy doing it, go and speak to your local flying club. If you're in Clacton, go and chat to Clacton Aero Club. Aerobatics is so much fun, and I do think if you love aeroplanes, give it a go. And perhaps if you're young and you're looking at something for a career, then why not think about flying? There's worse jobs that you can do.
Yes, we've got various military, RAF, various forces, troops on the ground, on the green sward. You can have a chat about future careers. How many times do we hear, particularly from members of the RAF, they say they fell in love with the thought of flying at air shows like this. We've spoken to people that have been at Clacton over those 30 years and said, you know, that might be for me. GCSE results day yesterday, A-levels the other day. Maybe it's something, a career for you to consider.
Now, eyes skywards again as John and Nigel pull up with the Vans RV4 aircraft into a heart. They were watching the live stream playback this morning and critiquing their own heart shapes. They felt that it wasn't quite to their standard. They're very critical of themselves. They like to improve and every display make it better and better. And John felt that his side of the heart was a bit floppy. and he wanted to have a nice tightly formed heart. So when we do that again later in the display, let's have a look and see how they get on, as at the moment they're flying opposition manoeuvres, basically mirroring